Welcome to A Chat with Heart podcast. I'm your host, Christina Martin. I'm here to guide us on this journey of heartfelt and uncensored conversations with friends I've met while touring my music in Europe and across North America, and people who have life experience that I genuinely believe we can all learn from. Our personal stories have great power to heal, influence, and inspire. All we have to do is show up for the conversation. If we just talk about it, we could shine a light, we could break a dark day. If we just talk about it, we can cut away, we can make a brighter day. I can't believe we're here. The season finale of Season 1 of A Chat with Heart podcast. I'm so grateful to all my little heartbeat listeners, that's you, and to my Patreon supporters for cheering this podcast on in its first season. It was a dream that Dale and I had to produce a podcast. For many years we had this dream, and I'm thrilled it's become part of our work routine. Just because I'm taking a seasonal break before starting work on Season 2, I'll keep the Heartbeat Hotline open so you can call in and make suggestions for future episodes. Or just leave a comment. You can also ask me any question. Okay, my guest today is Nancy Regan. Nancy has spent much of her career shining a light on the stories of other people. And she's just launched her first book, From Showing Off to Showing Up, an imposter's journey from perfect to present. And so now we get to hear Nancy's story. Great news! The book has hit the national bestseller list here in Canada. I'm so happy about this because it means it's really connecting with people on a soul level. I first met Nancy in 2007 when I was nannying for her brother David and sister-in-law Amy. That was a really regenerative time for me that I'll always be grateful for. I've always been attracted to Nancy's radiant energy, and she has a real gift for storytelling, which she brings to every interaction and conversation, whether she's podcasting, hanging out with you as a friend, hosting an event. I've witnessed her power in action on many occasions. Nancy built her reputation as the highly rated host of CTV Atlantic's Live at 5 for 15 years. She was the national host of Good Morning Canada and That News show on TVtropolis. And she's interviewed some of the most famous people on the planet, including some of my faves, Oprah, Madonna, Gwyneth Paltrow. Wild. That's just scratching the surface of who Nancy is. You gotta listen to this episode and buy her book to get to know her more. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And enjoy this season finale episode of A Chat with Heart.
Did you read the book?
What book? Yes, I've read the book. My little heartbeat listeners are going to love this. They're going to love you, and they're going to love your new book, An Imposter's Journey from Perfect to Present. That's not really the title. The title is From Showing Off to Showing Up.
You're setting the expectations awfully high. I prefer to set a low bar.
Okay, right. So you wrote a book. Who fucking cares? Yeah, I guess you wrote a book. I didn't have time to read it. No, I've been taking notes for months. I had 10 pages I needed to whittle down because I knew that this could really just take most of your life. Well, here we are, though, two wild and foxy podcast hosts. For years, you were a journalist and a news anchor. So now you're hosting two podcasts, The Canadian Love Map, The Soul Booth. I've cried listening to both. And I was really curious. Good. Mission accomplished. Cha-ching. What do you love about this media form, podcasting?
I think it is so adaptable to curiosity. I think that it opens up the world, until we realized that we could Zoom just about everything. Then you had to be in the same place as someone to do a video interview, an interview that you could put on video. I find podcasting is great because you can literally call anyone in the world and have them as a guest on your podcast, in theory. And one of our recent ones on the Canadian Love Map was Rick Hansen. and his wife. And
I loved it.
On their love story. And it was sort of the romantic side of his story that Canadians know, but it was that flip side of his personal life, and really just a beautiful conversation. I was lucky to meet him on the Man in Motion tour when he went through. I said that like with marbles in my mouth, the Man in Motion tour, for anyone who doesn't know it. And that would have been in probably 1989 or something. So you were a little girl. I was a bigger girl.
Not that much bigger.
I was 20 maybe.
Yeah. See, you,
Christina,
congratulations, because you dreamed, you wrote, you launched your first book, From Showing Off to Showing Up. Yeah, it's like, I know that I've not written a book, but like, that's all of that is an enormous amount of work, energy. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. You just made me think of a saying that I haven't thought of in a long time. And that is to say that behind every successful man, there's a surprised woman. and I thought behind me stands a surprised woman who is also me. Like, wow, I actually can't quite believe that it is, it's out in the world now. It's been a little slow to ship, but that's a COVID curveball, and it is what it is. But I felt, Christina, you can probably relate to this with any kind of creative project, but for a long time, I felt like I was climbing a huge mountain that I felt I would never get to the top of, really. And yet I kept on going. And some days it would be like, really? Why are you doing this? You're never going to get over this mountain. And then one day in February, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm on the way down the mountain. I don't know when I went over the top, but I was so focused on going up it for so long. So have you ever had that experience?
Every fucking day. Are you kidding me?
We're allowed to say that?
Of course you are. Yes. Okay. I rely heavily on reminders and quotes and from other creators who have been on this journey. Julia Cameron, it's the Strokes, it's Showing Up, it's the day-to-day as reminders, because I forget. I don't know why I forget. But the different stages you go through, and some are quite traumatizing and really put you through the ringer. But I think the reason why, and I'll be curious to have this conversation with you in the future. You forget sometimes how hard it can be, and then you do it all again. And I've never had children. I've never of my own or any children at all. I don't even know I said of my own. I've never had children.
I've never had stolen children. I've never borrowed children. Okay, no.
But I imagine that giving birth, I'm going to just throw this out there, Nance, to you, because I know you've been through this, is really painful. And then you do it again. And so there's got to be something, there's got to be some reason for why you do it again. There must be some joy and some meaningful.
I think it's called maternal not insomnia. What is it when you can't remember?
Yeah, amnesia.
Thank you. Okay, you have to admit that's a pretty funny word to forget.
Yeah, this happens all the time. Speaking of having books and as part of my, I guess, daily routine, reminders, how to kind of stay the course. I have this book by Melody Beattie. It's called The Language of Letting Go. Okay, and
I like that.
It's great. So open up to today, and you'll never guess what the topic of the meditation is.
Don't say it's showing up.
It's perfection.
Oh, funny.
You say in your book, perfectionism is often seen as a positive trait that increases your chances of success, but it can lead to self-defeating thoughts or behaviors that make it harder to achieve goals. It may also cause stress, anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. You did say that, right? That's in your book?
Yeah, I think that's actually a quote, to tell you the truth.
Oh, it's well, hey.
I am not, although I am a participant in anxiety, I am not an expert.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because this book is very much, I hope readers will get this. It's very much written from the perspective of a seeker, not a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I want anyone who reads it to feel like I'm on the path with them, or vice versa, not here, let me show you the
I
right
got that.
way.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's about being curious. And as Rumi said, I love this quote, sell your certainty and purchase bewilderment. So, that means stop being judgmental and certain of your opinion and start opening your mind and being curious.
You know what I'm curious about when it comes to perfection? Because oftentimes perfection has been, I've heard it as a very negative thing, like often about myself. And I felt also the negative side of being a perfectionist. But I think there's some good things to being a perfectionist too. I mean, let's talk about the upside of in your life. Like, how do you think being a perfectionist has helped you?
I actually love that question because I talk a lot about how perfectionism has not helped me and has gotten in my way. But very much like my fear, I do think my perfectionism has a role to play and has some value to me. And I know that you give me any job and the quality control will be there.
Yeah.
I will never fall short. I will always try to overshoot the bar, like we said at the beginning. And that comes with perfectionism. And that definitely has helped me in my professional life, and probably some ways in my personal life. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that one. But yes, I concede, Christina, that perfectionism is not all bad, but it can be also soul destroying.
Yeah, torture. Yeah. This topic of imposter syndrome, it's come up so often, and particularly whenever you're trying something new you haven't done yourself before, and that you see other people doing well. Yeah, it's so annoying. It's so annoying.
It's so annoying. I wrote a whole book about it.
Well, yeah. Why does it come up for us when we need it to not come up? Like in those moments where we really need that side of us to be supportive and loving and caring and and can you tell my little heartbeat listeners when exactly it comes up? Because it doesn't show up all the time, right? Like sometimes you're like, yeah, I got this is awesome, and other times you're like, oh my god, who am I kidding?
Yeah, but do you know, most of the successful women I know, and I know a lot of them, feel like they've gotten lucky, that much of what explains their position or their talent or their accolades, much of it is luck and good fortune and being in the right place at the right time. And that's true for me because I think I'm not a particularly ambitious person, partly because I'm fear driven, and definitely when I was in my 20s. So I happened to be in the right place at the right time. And I feel like I got picked up by this train that took me into the world of television, and the train just kept going. And I was more scared to jump off than stay on. So it gave me a great career, and I'm happy about that. But I can also, at this stage of my life, look back and see my younger self. And this is something I can, do as in the weird profession of television. I have hours and hours of tape where I can actually see my younger self doing my job. I can see my shininess now with compassion, because I also know that girl was so afraid of making a mistake because so many people were watching, 350,000 pairs of eyes on you is a lot. And I really started to be an imposter because I got a job when I was very young that I was not qualified for. And although I had the acting ability to pull it off to some extent, and I improved and I had some natural talent, always in my head was that stamp that I didn't belong there. You don't belong here. Yeah. You don't have the education. I hadn't gone to broadcasting school. I hadn't gone to journalism school. I hadn't even worked in a radio market. I just happened into the TV newsroom at the right time of the biggest station east of Montreal, and was thrown on the air with no experience except a little training they gave me to be a summer reporter. And 2 months later, when there was an exodus from the station, they asked me to audition for the co-host position. And it was like, of this show that had, more than 250,000 viewers. So I
No
felt,
biggie.
yeah, but no wonder I felt like an imposter. And
Of course.
I think of it this way in terms of that paradox of confidence. I think I had high confidence, but low self-esteem.
Yeah.
So there was part of me that had, that kind of chutzpah to say, okay, yeah, I'm just doing this. Here I go. And yet there was another part of me that really felt my own inadequacy and was constantly reminding me of that through an inner chatter.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now my question would be, you just wrote and launched a book for the first time. What was your relationship about this very topic? What was your relationship like with Gus, which is what you've named your fear, and
My gator, my reptilian brain.
Yeah, and imposter syndrome during this process?
Exactly what you would think it would be.
Ugh.
Who am I to put out a
Uh-huh.
book? Who am I to think people are going to read something that I've written? And that definitely intensified when my book morphed from what I originally pitched it to what it ended up being,
Mhm.
because I pitched a book about the fear of public speaking,
Right.
which, I had it all in my head, and this is how it could go in the chapters. And I was already doing workshops and one-on-one training with people around this. So that was just an easy book to write. And Nimbus Publishing were so kind and generous to accept me as a new author. And they gave me a fantastic editor who is their managing editor, Whitney Moran. And when I was giving her some of my writing samples, she was slowly, now I realizing that, oh, there's something else here. This is not the book that we're supposed to be writing. And I always say I'm subversively soulful with my clients, because I really believe that the fear of public speaking is the fear of public being and being seen. And beneath that, the fear of being seen as being inadequate. And beneath that, the fear that, we really are inadequate and we don't want someone else to know it. So that's sort of how I was approaching the book. But she came back to me and she said, we think that there is a different book here. We think that you should get rid of the fear of public speaking. And basically, I think what she was saying is that I was hiding behind the podium, hiding myself, and that I needed to think about writing a much more powerfully personal book.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure I was ready to do that.
That's
but
scary.
I stepped into it and I wrestled fear much of the process.
I am so glad you did.
Yeah, but you know what? Oh, thank you. But you know what? It's, in some weird way, it's the most liberating thing. It's the most terrifying and liberating thing to put a very personal, vulnerable book out into the world. And maybe you can relate to that with your music. It's really, it's close to your heart, and that I could get destroyed here. But at the same time, it's like, it's all out there now. I feel totally liberated.
I'm thinking about my audience. I'm thinking about people. I do want things to connect, and but it's so personal oftentimes. And then there's another part of me that's like, you know what, fuck it. I'm also doing this for me. And I can't care about what everyone's going to think. I need to follow my heart. And we all know the path with heart is not always the path of least resistance or the easiest decision making, and I just have so much faith in it, because in the end, that is the most important thing to me, to be on a path with heart. You talked about in the book, how sharing stories is liberating and liberates others. And I've just been dying to ask you, what are some connections that you have experienced because you've launched this book that you wouldn't have otherwise had?
Well, the most meaningful have been the people who have emailed me, who have read the book. This one in particular just kind of slayed me. She said, I just want to say that I'm so grateful for your bravery in putting this kind of a book into the world. She said, I'm 61 and I realized that I'm really just showing up for the first time in my life, that for a long time, I haven't been willing to allow myself to be seen. And she said, I wish I'd found this book like 20 or 30 years ago. And I, I wrote her back right away and said, you may never know what that note meant to me,
Yeah.
because seriously, like that, I said, this is the first, that was actually the first piece of feedback I got from someone who I hadn't solicited it from. So it wasn't one of my pre-readers like you, but it was just someone who had bought it and resonated with it and reached out to say thank you. And as I told her when I responded right away, it was so meaningful because that's why I wrote the book. I didn't make this, personal book to put out in the world to just overshare. I am putting it out because I want people to see themselves or parts of themselves in it. And we're all in it together is the phrase I heard yesterday. And I love that way of looking at it. And for me, the book is about creating a conversation, particularly with women, but with everyone, about how we wear masks in the world and protect ourselves seemingly, but actually we're just preventing connection when we don't allow our authentic selves to be seen, and how much richer life is when you actually move beyond that showing off, which I consider showing off is conducting yourself in the world according to other people's opinions, judgments, trying to get praise. And showing up is, no, this is who I am. And if you think, my hair isn't good enough today, or my clothes aren't good enough, or my message isn't good enough, that's okay. That's you're entitled to your opinion, and your opinion of me is none of my business.
There are a lot of things in this book that I was reading this going, I didn't know that you and I had so much in common in our youth, as tomboys and finger suckers. But
mine was a thumb. Was yours?
What are these two fingers, Nancy? Middle finger and your
ring finger.
Okay, ring finger, middle finger. Definitely, those were shoved all the way in. Yes, and had a baby blanket that I adored until I was 11.
Oh my gosh. So you chuckled when you read my experience.
Yeah, a lot of things made me chuckle. So I too was also a tomboy, and everywhere we would move, the kids would have to run up and ask, like, are you a boy or a girl? And oh my goodness, I laughed out loud and probably cried. I've had that experience in therapy where you go in and you really feel like I don't belong here, or what have I got to complain about? Why am I not happy? Everything's perfect. But you go to therapy, you do that thing, you take that step, and you basically fall apart.
Thing you know.
Exactly. Like right away. The first thing they do is shove a Kleenex box in front of you. And then after the entire session, because that takes a while to get everything out, the therapist looks at you and says, so do you still feel like you have no reason to feel overwhelmed? And then there's the validation of like, okay. But
we're so hard on ourselves. It's unbelievable how hard we are on ourselves, we women.
Yeah, absolutely. And your book was a really important reminder for me, and thank you, to give myself the love and compassion that I do try to give to others and my friends. And I'm conscious of it. You can see it happening in yourself, probably, listeners, where you just, you recognize it. You give yourself such a hard time. So I have like these sayings, and I know about you, and I'm like, chill the fuck out, Christina.
I've got a good one, Christina.
Yeah.
You probably know about my friend Audrey Parker, who died of medical assistance and dying 3 years ago.
Of course, yes.
Well, Audrey was sort of a poster girl nationally for MAID, medical assistance in dying, when she left because she went out fighting what she considered a glitch in the law. And her amendment that was created actually passed into law last year. Amazing. But Audrey was funny, and Audrey was very confident, and charismatic and magnetic, partly because, especially at that point in her life, she was really showing up and she was not into small talk and cocktail chatter. She would get right to the matter of people.
Yeah.
And I think people were so taken by how present Audrey was when she was in conversation with them and how authentic, that she really was like a moth, like a flame to moths.
Mhm.
And people just, especially in her final journey chapter, where she knew she was dying and decided to die joyfully, she was a superstar and she enjoyed her sense of contribution. But one of the things she did in her earlier life was etiquette. She was an etiquette coach, and she was someone who would take you and give you a full wardrobe, renovation and do your image. Anyway,
Wow.
she was my audience for a rehearsal that I was doing for the shopping channel when I was representing this fantastic line from Halifax that my former sister-in-law created. It's called Skin Fix. And I was
love
there.
Skin Fix. Amy.
It's so good. Amy.
Thank you,
used
Amy.
To work for Amy.
I was nanny. That's how we met.
That's how we met. Isn't that funny? Anyway, so I was doing this shopping channel appearance, my first one for Skin Fix. Actually, I think it was even for QVC in the States I was preparing, and I was nervous. And I had 13 different products to know inside out.
Wow.
And it was the first time I'd ever done it. And I said, Odd, I'm struggling a bit. And she said, come on over and just rehearse it for me and I'll give you feedback. And it's good to have a live audience. So I did it. I did my spiel and then I finished, ta-da, and she looked at me and she said, Nancy, she said, you know what? You're going to be so good. You know television. You come across so well on television and you clearly know all your stuff. There's just one thing you need to do. Calm the fuck down. And we always joke, but now our friends joke that it was 3 sentences: calm, period, the period, fuck. Oh, 4 actually. Calm,
yeah, okay. It's like, what?
And that is my little mantra now, because I can just say that to myself. And it's like a little connection with Audrey, but it's also something that makes me laugh and lets the tension out of me. And I go, oh yeah. Okay, this ain't brain surgery, as we used to say in television.
Since this is the season 1 finale for our Chat with Heart podcast, I want to say a very special thanks to our sponsor, Fluster. Fluster is a conversation game that was created by 2 longtime Canadian best friends, Walker and Devin. Walker just sent me an update I'd like to share with all of my listeners. Expansion packs are on the way, folks. Keep checking the Fluster website for when those launch. The Spicy Pack is a revamped version of the original sold-out Sexpansion Pack, and the Laugh Pack is a lighter and funnier expansion pack. It's been a lot of fun reading the Fluster questions in each episode to my guests. I think it's added more in-depth and colorful conversations. You, the listener, can buy the game at www.flustergame.com. Take it to all your dinner parties, Zoom meetings with colleagues or family, or when you're just hanging out with friends around the fire pit. And don't forget to save 15% when you make your purchase online. Use my promo code, Christina15. Right now, my best friend and the engineer for this podcast, Dale Murray, is here with me, and he's chosen a Fluster question to ask me. But keep listening, because later on in this episode, I'm going to ask our guest, Nancy, a Fluster question. All right, Dale, what do you got for me?
Okay. What event in your life do you feel has shaped you the most significantly?
Good question. I'm going to say that moving to Austin when I was 19 years old had the biggest impact in my life. That was the first time I was so far away from home, outside of Canada. First time I had kind of like access to a vehicle. Not my own, I didn't own the vehicle, but I had sort of permission to drive it and explore. And it was the first time I went somewhere and I didn't really know anybody. And it was the first time that I encountered singer-songwriters, like live original singer-songwriters, just by driving basically down to 6th Street in Austin and walking along and listening, to what was happening inside each of the bars every week, and then just going inside and checking stuff out and checking the paper every week to see who I could go and, just discover on my own. And so, it had a huge impact on me, just being in a place where there was so much great live music. I think that age, I was really open. I had put university on pause, and I didn't really have a huge agenda other than just making space for myself to figure out some of my life, or the direction of my life. And during that time, my host mother, Kim Oswald, gifted me a copy of Julia Cameron's The Artist Way. So I started reading that and doing the daily artist dates and weekly artist dates and exercises in that book. And so that really set me on a path that really has kind of taken me to here where I am today. And it was the start of kind of developing a discipline for being a creative person, and sort of laid some of the groundwork for, becoming a singer-songwriter even. And yeah, Austin, Texas, that was the big pivotal moment of my life. And I'm so glad I took that leap that summer. And I'm so glad I stopped university for a while and just followed my heart.
You show up.
I try.
You even did when I met you when you were in your 20s, I think. And you may say it was a version of showing up, but that's one of the things that attracted me to you, was that you were seemingly really comfortable in your own skin, and you were not afraid to be different than the norm. And I mean that in the best way. I have no interest in having normal friends. And
I was riddled with anxiety around the time when I met you, because this is not relating to something you talk about in your book as well, wearing a mask and it negatively affecting your relationships. And I'm a serial monogamist, as you are as well. Mm-hmm. And I know how to pick them when it comes to marriage. I married 2 great men, and I'm fortunate for the first one. I definitely had my mask on, and when I realized, because relationships can, bring out the shit if you haven't sorted it, if you haven't dealt with it. And I wasn't willing to face it, and I didn't want anyone to see it. And I really didn't believe anybody could help me through it except me. I had to do all by myself. But those things aren't an issue when you're by yourself. When you want to choose to be in a relationship, you better get your shit together. But I was really struggling in a lot of ways, but really dedicated to showing up and committed to health. And so when I first met you, I was in that face the fear and do it anyway. But I had so much support, and your family, honestly, and David and Amy, who I was a nanny for, and at one point a live-in, they invited me to stay in their guest house when I was actually going through a really, really tough time. And it meant everything. It meant everything to me. And I was able to somehow manage to chip away at making that transition to becoming like a full-time artist, which was hard. I had nothing like in terms of financial security, but I had good friends, wonderful people around me that really believed in me, and it allowed me to think, to believe in myself, even though there was the voices and the monkey brain in me that was not always saying positive things about myself. So
I admire that so much, that you managed to power through in spite of that. And it is classic. Like, you thought I was confident, probably. I thought you were totally confident. And yet we both harbored those insecurities that we would never want anyone to know about.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that because I was fond of you then, I have witnessed and celebrated every frigging signpost along your journey. like
Oh,
as
thank
if
you.
you were my daughter almost, you know. I have just been so excited to watch your journey and
Thanks.
just the way you're showing up in the world and the way your music has matured and deepened. And I love listening to you, partly because I love you and partly because your voice is just gorgeous and Dale is brilliant.
Well, I feel the same way about you. Like I think at one point in my life I didn't know how to really show up for other people as much. But there were turning points where I was like, this is going to be way more fun if I celebrate what everybody
Mm.
else is doing that I love. And you start noticing when you practice gratitude, you start noticing what everybody else is going through and celebrating all those little and big milestones. It just makes life richer, I think. And that's one of the reasons why I've been saving so much of this digging into your book and this conversation, because I'm like, this is our private little, no one's gonna, this is our private universe, now it's time to celebrate what you've done and how meaningful it is. And the stories really do have the power to heal and are liberating. People do see somebody like you and think, well, they've got it all. They must not have any struggles. And because
Mm.
you do put your best foot forward, when you're on television, especially when you're working for somebody else and you think, well, I need to have a certain demeanor and and also you talk about the pressure of having to think about how you look and having that asked of you as well. And I was curious if that was any issue for you writing a book and launching a book, or are you just so past that now?
If your listeners could see me, they would know that I have stopped coloring my hair. I when I
Silver
was
fox.
after I silver fox. I was going to say, when you said we're wild and foxy podcast hosts, I was wondering who's wild and who's foxy.
Well, which do you want to be?
Oh, well, I'm
We could
afraid
trade.
to say, I was going to say, I'm afraid to say my wild days are over, but who's to say?
They don't have to be. Wild doesn't have to involve narcotics, Nance,
That's right. Absolutely.
or promiscuity.
Absolutely.
But I
I think
celebrate.
once you make friends with your fear, you can get back to being wild. And wild is an interesting word, because I always say that this book, for me, the writing of it was about figuring out who I was before the world told me who and how to be, and getting back to that 7 or 8 year old self.
Yeah.
And that's when I was wild, not tamed yet. And that takes me to Glennon Doyle's amazing book Untamed.
Mm.
That's what it's like. We tame children in our society. And the way I say it is that when you're a kid, you're always hearing, be good, be quiet, behave, but nobody ever just says just be
Yeah.
however you are. And for tomboys like you and me, you get the message that if you're a girl, you're supposed to dress like this, and you're supposed to
Absolutely.
sit like this, and you're
Yeah.
not supposed to do this, and you're supposed to do this,
Yeah.
and you're supposed to like that. And all of those messages help you craft this, armor and mask that you wear out into the world to show people, oh, look what a perfect representation of a girl I am. And you know that you're the Wizard of Oz.
I got conflicting messages. I think my parents, on the one hand, really wanted to support me making my own decisions, and it's part of the reason why I think I'm an independent person. But there were definitely those times, those messages when it came to family photos. Christina's got a. Sorry, I just looked so ridiculous in the dress and some of the dresses, but Christina's got to wear a dress. Why don't the guys have to wear a dress? I didn't get it, and I was miserable. Even how we speak, and how we get judged for some of the things we say, and how that aligns with our gender. And particularly I'm talking about cursing, and also the standards of like forgiveness, as a woman, just the standards being so hard and strict for so long when, I would watch my brothers and males, and it was like no big deal. Oh, that's such a boys will be boys kind of attitude. And I wanted to be on that side of the, I wanted to,
Yeah. But then what do we do, Christina? We end up internalizing all those rules and judgments and turning them back on ourselves.
yeah, for
And
sure.
that's where our inner critic is saying, you're not this, you're not enough, you're too much. you're,
Too much.
very rarely does it say, you're just right. If we had a
Yeah.
voice that said, you're just right. And that's for me what showing up is. It's about coming to a place where you have figured out what you don't like about yourself. Because I think you have to do that before you can get to liking yourself.
Mhm.
For me, I certainly did. And that's a big part of what the book is. But once you find a way through to liking yourself, then you can just show up and not worry about other people's
Yeah.
judgment, because it doesn't define you. And it goes back to what you were saying before. In my experience, when I can feel my own light, I can welcome and celebrate and love the light in others, like just be so excited, where I might have once been jealous or
Yeah.
envious or, resentful even. And now I don't see it from a lack or scarcity point of view. I see it from, I'm enough, so I'm not threatened. Your success doesn't threaten me. And it's certainly part of why I can, even though I was a singer in a previous life, I can really recognize and celebrate your voice in this life. I just can't carry a key. Like, I still have a great voice. I just can't carry a tune.
Everyone can sing. It doesn't matter, but I know what you're getting at, but everyone can sing.
Feelings.
Everyone should sing. And
I agree.
I say that my mother, I think, at one point when I was a teenager, I asked her to stop singing in the car because of my perfectionism, probably, and wanting it to be, like on the beat. I mean, not everyone has rhythm. That it could be learned.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Don't quote me
My
on
daughter
that.
would agree with you, and she would
Yeah.
say, "Oh, she'll be like, Mom, seriously?
But
Do you need to sing along to everything?"
but
And the flip side of that, Christina, is that my oldest son, as you know, is a singer, and
oh yeah,
he just came out singing. And he used to, in
Ouch.
high school, he'd just walk through the kitchen and all of a sudden break into a full barreled, Broadway tune. And I'd be like startled. Every once in a while, I'd have to say, can you just stop singing for 5 minutes?
yeah, I've heard
But
him in
it was
action.
joyful. Now I miss it, of course. He's not in the house anymore. He's almost 26. But
That's
yeah,
incredible.
I know. He was a baby when you and I met, basically.
I mean, I remember him singing in one of the
Oh, maybe he was 10.
Yeah, he was a 10, and I remember him singing at one of the house concerts we did, I think, and being blown away. And, just knowing, well, obviously he's gonna, meet up with David Foster and he's gonna be
He's
okay.
still waiting to meet with David Foster, for the record.
Well,
but
he doesn't
he's
need
a
David
good producer
Foster.
in the meantime. And he loves,
Yeah.
his singing is great. It's interesting as a mom to witness your kids foster talents, whatever they are,
Mhm.
and be able to watch them grow. And then to see a gift in action is really beautiful. I think no matter who it is, but especially when you can witness your child expressing their gift in the world. I think, Christina, that the beauty of art is to watch someone doing something they were born to do.
My mind went to, I was
Wait.
a model in a nude sculpting class once in Austin, Texas for one summer. And I was thinking, here I am sitting up naked on a pedestal, really, and watching art unfold, variations of me, many,
Right.
getting to go around and like see how,
Wow.
a lot of them didn't look anything like me. It was beside the point. It was just really, it was a cool process as the model to just go and see what everyone's interpretation would be. And
Yeah.
some of them had horns, I will say. Some of them.
You know what,
yeah.
though? I mean, I think that would be
Talk
a
about-
very cool scene in a film, to take it from the perspective of the nude in the middle, and then see all the different ways in which their physicality is interpreted. But also, I think that's such an amazing metaphor for the fact that everyone in our life sees us in a different way. It's like,
Yeah.
if you go into a little town and everybody, you go in each different house, they have the same-ish view,
Yeah.
but everybody has their own view, their own perspective. And that's true about people who encounter you in the world, and they bring their own biases and their own senses of inadequacy to
Mhm.
bear, and they either see the good and bad or both in you.
Yeah.
And it's not the same probably as anyone else sees of you. That's a cool metaphor.
Tell you what, you direct it and I'll star in it. I'll be the nude
Yeah.
model again.
It could be a good music video.
Yeah, I think I just did that one. There's a nude sculpture of me in.
Yeah. Oh, that is you?
That's my body, but
Oh my.
I didn't have to take my clothes off. But the director designed, custom made a digital sculpture that looks pretty real.
Wow,
with
you have
my
amazing
dimensions and
breasts.
yeah, and then he shattered me apart, which is metaphorical.
Did you hear what I said?
No, I didn't. Did you say I have a nice ass? I hope so.
I said you have amazing breasts.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they're not bad. They're not bad. It's funny you say that because I don't have a strong connection to my breasts, but I can look at them in a mirror and go, oh, they're where they should be right now. That's cool. And they don't bother me. Like they're not super heavy, or they're there.
Yeah.
But I'm not someone who like they could come or go. I don't really care, but they do look good. And I do like things that look proportional. And
So how do you feel about your ass? Since you brought it up?
I don't look at it as much because it's in behind me, but I joke about the ass, the same thing, right? It's like this lump of fat and muscle and skin and all this. It's there, and I like to try to keep it up in a place, and sometimes it goes below the bar. And Dale has a rating system, and I ask him, so how we do? And I don't. It's just fun. It's fun to joke about my butt. And
mine will be forever 18 in my mind.
You talk about your butt in the book.
Oh, I do? Oh, yeah, I do. Oh,
yeah.
yeah, that's true. I do, because I really, I would walk down a beach and wear a towel around my waist because I was so conscious of any, cellulite and dimples. Cellulite has been like my kryptonite, I guess, in too much of my life.
Really? I can't imagine now I want to see it. That's, I just want to see it. And I was like, what does she mean by I have cellulite as well. I'm curious what yours looks like. How come we can't show each other things like that, or show each other how much debt we have? I've always been fascinated about why don't we just put it out there? Why don't we just talk? When I was
right on, sister.
But
that's what I love about the Dove. I know the Dove campaign has all gotten quite commercialized, but I love the gist of it. I love the fact that they broke boundaries by saying, let's put women in their real bodies in our ads.
Yeah.
And this bullshit of only showing images of the female body of someone who is a size 2 or 4, who, represents 0.5 of the population.
Yeah.
0.5, that's 50%. I mean 0.05.
It's okay. She's not great at math, ladies and gentlemen, but there's time.
Yeah, I just love the idea that they put real women into ads. And I'm at a stage in my life where you realize I've been a control freak all my life, and my body has been one of the things I've tried to control.
Yep.
And now menopause has really put it beyond my control to some extent.
Wow.
And no matter how I eat or how much I exercise, my body has changed. And, I say in the book that I discovered, and when I gained the COVID-19 pounds, I discovered that I could think, oh, you know what? There's more of me to matter. I matter more.
Yeah.
So there's that much more of me in the world. And I need to learn that it's okay to take up space. And the main thing is to be healthy, no matter what your size.
Yep. And I'm agreeing. And yet I struggle with this and have my whole life, kind of in secrecy, but I think about it. And
I know. Well, you said to Dave Carroll in your podcast that you thought you were bored, so you were going to lose 3 pounds.
Yeah. It's just something to do. Uh, I got some time on my hands. Might as well lose 3 pounds. This is
I
like a
love that
legit.
conversation, by the way.
This is so. I mean, I am a very healthy person. I think. I hope. But I have unhealthy thoughts, and there have been times when I've had unhealthier practices. Let's say, but I have this thought sometimes where I'm like, it would be so annoying for me to gain weight because I can't afford a new wardrobe, and I really like the clothes I have. Like that's like a legit. So I can't. I just can't
Yeah,
gain weight.
that's good incentive.
Yeah, and as you get older, I'm learning now, your rib cage can expand, your hips can shift,
I'm
and
nodding wildly.
yeah, and then
Yes.
the amount of work it would take to chisel away at it, and it's just like, oh, it is so much harder, and I'm now at that point where I'm like, I think I'm gonna have to to actually go shopping, and because I want to be comfortable. Part of being healthy and showing up and feeling like you're in your own skin is comfortable in your own skin is feeling comfortable in your clothes. My clothes are pretty tight, and so I think about things
You
like
can't wear spandex. Just
you know what? I do have a really great new pair of Spanx that can shrink or expand and feel great. So I think about that when I go shopping. I'm like, it has to expand, and it
Yeah.
has to, I want things to be in a certain place, and I do think about that quite a bit, but maybe not forever.
You know what I'm curious about? Since I'm used to interviewing people rather than being interviewed, I'm turning the tables on you.
You're
I'm
co-hosting.
curious about, and this is part of wanting to start a conversation. It's why I'm wearing Converse on the cover. But what, if anything, did you learn about yourself by reading my book?
I think it drove home the fact that I am a perfectionist. So one of the things that you, as someone who had different forms of trauma as a child, there's a line that children don't get traumatized because they're hurt. They get traumatized because they were alone in their hurt. And it's kind of like not just an aha moment for me, but a meltdown moment that I talked about actually in my therapy with my therapist. I had to really stop and like kind of go over that, and it took me back to my own experience with trauma and why certain aspects of it people would think that is the reason why it's so harmful, and my argument has always been it's the way that everyone around me dealt with it when I brought it to everyone's attention that was so crushing, and I felt so alone. And that moment of really deciding as a young girl, like 6, 7, that I have to look out for myself. Like I'm alone.
Wow.
The grown-ups can't. Yeah, I can't rely on them right now. So that was a big one that made me think a lot about that part of my life and how to continue working on that and my trust issues. So that was huge. There was also you had said I was running in circles chasing my tail when I really just needed to sit still. And that to me was something I relate to on and off throughout my life. For me it's always been this, okay, I'm in it. I'm so far in it. Then something helps me recognize it, and then I can do something about it. Which is why I think a book like this is so important for people and for me, because you can, I guess for lack of better, like fall off the wagon, if it's alcohol is your thing,
We're
and
programmed to forget, right?
yeah, and that you can get back on, and sometimes we need help. We can't do it alone. So we should keep sharing these stories. And I've often thought, what am I doing? Who am I kidding? Why am I making these big plans and throwing money into this thing that who knows if anybody's going to care? But the reason I guess I keep convince myself to keep trying and doing is because I believe that no, the work I'm doing personally is so important, and it's got to help somebody. Because some music helped me, like shows helped save me in my life, and singing saved my life. Writing music saved my life and brought me to all the things that have saved my life and given me life. And so that's why I have to do it. So to answer your question, which I totally forgot what the question was, but
No, you've done a good job so far.
you're welcome. Um, I think it was a big reminder, your book, of all the things that I need and right now, because there's times in your life where you're busy doing the things and you're doing okay, and maybe you don't need the reminders, on a friendship level. Like, and we don't spend a lot of time together, but whenever we have been in each other's company, I think there's a connection between us. But I feel there's a deeper understanding now of where you come from, who you are, who you're becoming. And so I appreciate that. And we're all along for the ride. It's like we're all in this together. So it's kind of an affirmation that, we are all connected too. Does that make sense, Nancy? Co-host?
So much sense. So much sense. And when you were talking there, I really have an ADHD profile in my thinking, but also I think very visually. So when you were talking about not helping each other, but that's what I saw, the idea that we're all in this together. What I saw visually was when we are on a platform where we're safe and content and feeling good, I think that we're called to reach out a hand and help people onto that platform.
Yeah.
And it's a step. It's not the be all and end all, but it means I have loved the books that have helped me, have been like a hand reaching down to say, here, come on up here. You're okay.
Yeah.
And I talk about this, that people give self-help books a hard time.
Yeah,
and
they
I
do.
always think it's interesting because I think in our society, weakness is really how people have disdain for weakness. They want to lean away from weakness, and that's probably evolutionary. You want to associate yourself with strength, and people see psychological neediness, maybe, or if you need therapy, maybe that's weakness. I think that if you are working on yourself, and by that I mean seeking to understand what makes you tick, what slows you down, what is your gift to share with the world, then if you're working on that, then you're expanding your life.
Yeah.
And I don't see that as weakness. I see that as strength. I think to allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to say, how can I make my life richer? How can I be better as a human being? I think that takes a lot of strength and courage. And I think you do it with your, creativity all the time and putting yourself out there in the world. And I'm always going to say yes. When you call or text to say, hey, I'm coming to the city, you want to blank, I'm going to say yes.
This is going to come in handy. I can't wait. It's time for a Fluster conversation break. What moment or phase of your life do you look back on now and cringe?
Oh, I think you know the answer to that.
First of all, there's nothing, if it's what I think you're going to talk about, there's nothing to cringe about. I think it's awesome. Yeah? And it's such a great story. And like, I wish I could have done that.
You wish you could have been in the Miss Canada pageant?
Yes.
Wearing a bathing suit and nylons on national television. You wish that, really?
Yes. I mean, you're talking to someone who was a nude model for a
that's true.
class, right? So I would have wanted to do it because it was a challenge at that. How old were you when you did that?
I was 20.
So that was how old I was when I did this class. And it was an intentional decision because I knew I was uncomfortable with my body. So I would have been like, I'm going to do this. I'm totally terrified, but I know it's good. Maybe I was an adrenaline junkie or something, but go ahead. Tell me more.
That's incredible, actually. I'm amazed by that. I could never have done that. I think I could do it now, but I could never have done it in the previous decade of my life.
Well, I mean, we weren't raised in a culture that, encouraged, like if you go to the spa in Canada, you got to bring a bathing suit and a towel. Like if you go in Europe, you have to go naked. Like families are constantly naked around each other. And here it's just not that way. So I can understand
So
why.
repressed, eh? We're so
It's
repressed about our bodies.
it's weird. It is weird.
But you're not. I mean, for you to be able to do that at that age, I think that is expansive.
It was terrifying. You can find the Miss Canada pageant on YouTube because that's where I saw you.
Oh, you are going to be in so much trouble for saying that.
It's awesome. Check it out. And
oh no. So if you check it out, okay, in fairness, if you check it out, you will see how obviously I was showing off rather than up. I was trying so desperately hard to be what I was supposed to be, and I cannot watch it without cringing for that sweet young girl who, thought she had to be all that in a pack of butter cookies. I don't know.
yeah. When I'm like, when I saw it, I was like, I saw Fearless. So good. I guess your mask was really convincing.
Can you see my eyes? I looked like I was a deer caught in the headlights with this fake smile on, saying, I'm Nancy Regan, Miss Nova Scotia, sponsored by the Nova Scotia Provincial Exhibition.
That was good though, what you just did. Yeah. You could do it again.
Very performy. So yes. when I work with clients who are made nervous by stage of any kind, even just an interview, what I say is you want to focus on your contribution rather than your performance.
Yeah.
You switch gears out of performance mentality. How am I being judged? How do they see me? How good am I?
Yeah.
To what am I here to give?
Exactly.
And I was definitely in performance mode then.
Oh.
Thank you for that.
Hey,
Thanks for that.
But you should.
If you have to cut anything out of this conversation because we've gone too long, that's an excellent candidate.
I'm sure there will have to be at some cutting, but it'll mostly be me. Yeah. Part 2 of your book, Doorways to Presence, which I didn't get at first from you. The copy you sent me didn't have that. And I was like, where the fuck are the practical tools? Where the fuck are they? So the part 2, Doorways to Presence, are going to help you, the listener, in your journey to showing up. There's some, and these are things that you practice in your daily life. I love that part as well because there were things that I could relate with that I practice as well. There were some new tips and tricks. I love the whole worst case scenario, having that in your back pocket. And I'm an over planner.
I bet. I was going to say, you must have that as a performer on stage. Do you have a WCS in your back pocket?
I'm actually working on a specific kind of one it's not a big deal actually, but that I think would be more fun because my songs are so serious. It's nice to break the tension with just kind of raw honesty and like silly stuff.
You're so good at that though, Christina. You're so good on stage at connecting with the audience. And seriously, this is what so when I coach someone in presentation training, you have to share some of yourself. And that's, the work of Brene Brown. Like we can't have true connection unless we are authentic and allow ourselves to be seen. And that's the hardest thing, but it's also the most rewarding because my gosh, the female friendships I have in my life right now are testament to the difference it makes when you show up.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in my 20s, I just didn't have, I had great friends, but you'd only go to a certain level. And there were things you would never talk about with them or reveal. And now I have deeper friendships because I'm not afraid to be seen and I feel very seen by my friends. So yeah.
We have to remind people 2 podcasts. Are there more? Are you hosting more podcasts?
Well, now I'm taking over yours.
You're
co-hosting. Dale and I thought we should, do this kind of mutiny today. I'm announcing it to you on the air. You're out of here.
Right? There's no pay, right? Like, this is just pro bono.
Yeah. Well, and no, you know what? My first podcast that I created is the Soul Booth, and it has been on hiatus while I've been writing my book, just because I couldn't. First of all, because when the pandemic hit, our sponsors were all service industry sponsors, businesses who, couldn't afford to sponsor us during a pandemic.
Yeah.
And their business dried up completely. So I basically put it on hiatus.
Which, by the way, has guests like Elizabeth Gilbert, Rick Hansen, Anne Barabay, and more. It's a wonderful podcast. There's a dog.
David McGinley. Oh, yeah. Lama Sultram Alioni. So there's lots of great episodes to go back to. And you can do that on this is a shameless plug.
No, I was going to ask you, this is actually where I was getting at, like where can my Little Heartbeat listeners start stalking
Little
you?
Heartbeat listeners, come to nancyregan.ca and you will feel welcome and appreciated and honored. So it's nancyregan.ca, and you can see old episodes of the Soul Booth. But you can also link to the Canadian Love Map, which is another podcast I host. This wasn't my idea. I didn't create it in the same way, but I love it as if it was actually my child. I really enjoy it so much. And you and Dale are going to be guests. We've talked about that already.
What if we just sit there and have nothing? Like, yeah, we met, so what? Like, who cares?
Well, it'll be a short episode.
Okay.
But I love it because it's not just schmaltzy romance stories. It is just love of all kinds. And it's uplifting, and it's a privilege for Canadians to share their stories with me. And I really, really love it. So that's something else I'm doing. And then on my website, you can see what other professional offerings I have.
Buy the book.
Singing at your wedding is not one of them.
One more question before I got places to be, Nancy.
Yeah. I got nothing to do, sister, nothing to do. My life is such a whirlwind right now. I'm not used to being this busy, to tell you the truth. It's a wild ride.
Enjoy it.
Oh, it's awesome.
Because it's going to end when we die someday.
When we die.
Your grandmother's name was Rose. And I'm soon going to get a tattoo of a rose on my finger representing courage. This is actually part of a future upcoming merch line of temporary tattoos, but I'm going to get the real tattoo among other ones. No pressure, but would you be up for getting a tattoo?
If we do this,
don't
tell my husband, because he really doesn't like tattoos, I don't think.
Okay.
But I would absolutely be willing to go rogue with you, especially with a rose. In fact, I've got to tell you this. In the book I share, this is probably one of the most vulnerable parts of the book for me, is that I share my own poetry. And
I didn't even bring that up. It's true. It's huge, though.
It's pretty dorky, but
no, it's not dorky at all. It's beautiful.
But it's simple and from the heart, and it tends to land in people's hearts because it really is created at that level. And I started writing poems when I was a kid and loved it. But like a lot of my creativity, I packed it away for many, many years. And I've come back to poetry writing. And I'll tell you, when the pandemic hit and I was locked down and scared of what was going to happen to the world and to me and my family and everything, I had this experience where poems just started falling through me. And I really believe that I write poems often with my grandmother Rose, who was a poet. And I happen to have this poem on my wall. I don't know that this has ever been made public. And it's probably something that was written in the 40s. And it's called Two Little Red Bows by Rose M. Regan. She was originally Green from Newfoundland. And it's about her daughter who died at the age of 7 after, I think, a tonsillectomy, some normal, something that would be a very easy process right now. And it goes like this: touched, have lain, 2 folded ribbons I found today. You left them there when you went away, all ready to wear again. 2 little red bows that proudly tied your little brown pigtails tight as you skipped in play through the summer day, the brightest of all things bright. It may seem odd since you're up there with God with a gown of stars to wear, but my dream of you shows 2 little red bows that you wore on your pigtails here. Wouldn't that be
Rose.
cool?
Oh,
I know. That's Rose. So
wow.
she died before I was born, Christina.
Oh
And
my
I don't
goodness.
know if I am her reincarnated or if I just
Yeah.
happened to have her as a partner in poetry on the other side of the veil, but I definitely feel a connection to her.
That's
And
beautiful.
thanks for letting me share that poem. That's kind of I just put it up on the wall the other day. So when you started talking about roses, I thought, oh, I think I'm supposed to share that.
I think you're supposed to get a tattoo with me.
Okay, let's do it.
Welcome to the Heartbeat Hotline, 1-902-669-4769. I'm the host of A Chat with Heart podcast, Christina Martin, and I'm so excited you called. Leave me your question, a suggestion for the podcast, or a comment about this episode. Please be aware your message may be used on the podcast and social media. Tell me your name, where you're calling from, and it's also fine if you want to remain anonymous. Thanks for listening. Have a great fucking day. That's a wrap for season 1 of A Chat with Heart podcast, produced and written by me, Christina Martin, and co-produced and engineered by Dale Murray. Check out Dale's website, dalemurray.ca. I hope you'll listen back to earlier episodes, and I'm always up for suggestions for future guests you'd like to hear on this podcast. The podcast theme song, Talk About It, was written by me and recorded by Dale Murray. You can find it on all the places you stream music. Production plans for this podcast and Season 1 are supported by the Province of Nova Scotia's Women in Business Implementation Fund and the Creative Industries Fund. Special thanks to Terrence Taylor for mentoring me on hosting this podcast and really digging deep with me on my production plans for Season 1. I wrestled fear and managed to come out the other side with a collection of beautiful conversations to share with the world. To Crystal Seeberger at Sensory Friendly Solutions, thank you for helping me learn how to be a more inclusive, accessible, and sensory-friendly human. And thanks to my Eureka Siddham Paranadhan for editing transcripts. Visit my Patreon page to become a monthly or yearly supporter of this podcast and my music endeavors. If you're new to Patreon, it's a membership platform that helps creators get paid. Sign up at patreon.com/Christina Martin. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, I'd love for you to share, rate, leave a review, and subscribe to A Chat with Heart on all the places you listen to podcasts. Wishing you, my little heartbeats, a great day.